Hello, everybody. Welcome back after our wonderful retreat at Diamond Mountain. I hope all of you were able to attend, at least online. Nice to see some of you here who were there. And I've got two guests here in the house, so if you see me looking over this way, I'm looking at them. So we are, excuse me, I still have allergies. And I'm still getting organized. Hold on one sec here. And there we are. Okay. I think I'm finally ready. First, we didn't have internet this morning. That's how we started. So let's hope that our seeds are good and that we keep the internet this morning. For those of you who don't have your cameras on, it would be lovely to see your faces. So I'm not talking to still photographs. It's not quite so fun. And do we need to take a pause for interpreter Vladislav, who has his hand raised? Looks like maybe it was taken care of. Okay, so first things first. Can you see my screen? Yes, you can. So as usual, let's start with thinking about this perfect world that we want to make, that we're working to make, trying very hard to make in these crazy times that we all live in. And also to all of the teachers of our lineage who have passed down this information year upon year upon year for over 2,500 years. It's pretty incredible, right? So we also offer to them this world that they are teaching us to create. Because that's all they wanted too, was to have a perfect, beautiful, peaceful world where everybody had enough and everybody got along and the environment was cared for and loved and all of those things. Here is the great earth, filled with the smell of incense, covered with a blanket of flowers, the great mountain, the four continents, wearing a jewel of the sun and moon. In my mind, I make them the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami. And then the next prayer we do, which you're going to have to do from memory because I don't have it on the slide here, which is taking shelter in the fact that our minds are empty and therefore we can see and hear it and experience it as an enlightened being's mind. that the Dharma exists both as books, but also as the realizations that we have, which hopefully some of you had last week during retreat. Ultimately, it's the direct perception of emptiness. And then refuge in the Sangha, which is someone who has seen emptiness directly because they really know the path and can be our guide and lead us there. So let's just imagine that. Sangye Chudam Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyabsu Chi Dagi Jenso Ki Pe Sunam Ki Jola Penchir Sange Drupar Sho Sange Chudam Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyabsu Chi Daki Chunyen Gipe Sunam Ki Jola Penchir Sange Drupar Sho Sange Chudam Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyabsu Chi Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sunam Ki Jola Penchir Sange Drupar Sho. So it's been a while since we had our last class. I don't know if you remember where we left off. We did finish the sutra, right? We did do that. The commentary on the true intent. And this was a sutra that the Buddha explained all his other sutras. And so we got down to understanding more and more about which of the three turnings of the wheel is figurative and which is literal. And we went through the two Mahayana schools, which are mind only and middle way. We finished all of that. Now Lama Tsongkhapa is going to go into like a new country, new territory. And he's moving on to the commentaries from ancient India, over which they span like over 1,000 years of time. And they explain the contents of that sutra. Certain great thinkers of ancient India, they took the trouble, they took the time to sit down and think about it, which is, of course, what we're asked to do, right? And then they wrote down their reflections on the sutra to explain it, to help us to understand it. And so, as you probably know, Lama Tsongkhapa, he was an avid scholar, among many other things. He was a great scholar. And so he would take the most important points out of the greatest commentaries and put them together for us. So one of the greatest, perhaps, is, say, Tokme, Pakpat Tokme. Anybody know who Pakpat Tokme is? Yes, thank you, Arya Asanga. And of course, I think we all know what Arya means. It's someone who has seen emptiness directly. So Pakpa Tokme Arya Sangha lived 365 to 440. And Lama Tsongkhapa says that the main person who's commenting on this sutra is Arya Sangha. And he's not just going to say that to us. He's not satisfied with just saying, oh, yes, Arya Sangha commented, was the main person who commented on the sutra. In Lama Tsongkhapa's beautiful way, he proves to us in her reading, right, that he was indeed, the main person. And so he goes through the commentary, Lama Tsongkhapa does, and he proves to us, maybe 3 to 5 places where Arya Sangha refers directly to that sutra. And he does this in his work called the Compendium. That's the name of his book. And the Compendium is in his Levels of the Bodhisattva and also in other works. And in this, he's explaining his beliefs. Arya Sangha is explaining his beliefs. And he refers directly to the sutra quite often, and Lama Tsongkhapa gives some type of beautiful examples. And those short quotations are really sweet. And that being said, we don't have time to go through them, but you can find them in your reading. So there are 5 characteristics of emptiness which are really cool. And you'll find those in your reading. And then he mentions the 8 consciousnesses. 8? Don't some of you wonder why the 8 consciousnesses? Normally we only talk about 6, right? Mind only talks about 8. In fact, last night at Mixed Nuts, we were talking about the 7th consciousness, the kunchi, right? The storehouse consciousness, the refrigerator. But we don't have time to go through those either. It's like, what are we going to go through, right? And by the way, do you remember who we say Arya and Arya Asanga? I was going to say Arya Nagarjuna. Arya Asanga was taking dictation from? Does anybody remember? He was taking dictation from Lord Maitreya. And there's this big fight among Western scholars, at least, about who wrote the books. Did Arya Sangha write them, right? And Buddhists say that Arya Sangha went to Maitreya's paradise. Where's that? Like, where's Maitreya's paradise? How far is that? Did he have to take this big, long journey to go to Maitreya's paradise? My friends are saying, no, it's right here. It's right here. He went to Maitreya's paradise, right where he was. And he took notes of what Lord Maitreya said, and that became 5 extraordinary books. Those 5 extraordinary books form much of the curriculum of a Tibetan monastery. 2 of them were written from the mind-only point of view, and 2 of them were written from the middle way point of view. And Je Tsongkhapa, bless him, right, points out that even in the ones that were written for the middle way point of view, Arya Asanga is still using that sutra as his weapon. He's still hung up on that sutra. It's like he's gotta get to the core of it. And he, meaning Arya Sangha, bases his whole work from Lord Maitreya on this sutra. Which sutra? The sutra in which the Buddha explains the other sutras. The Essence of Eloquence Sutra. Trangne Lekshe Ningpo. And when he does that, Arya Sangha, he like revives, awakens the mind-only school. Some scholars say that Arya Asanga began the mind-only school. Is that true? Who began the mind-only school? Lord Buddha began the mind-only school. So Lord Buddha, in the chapter when the Bodhisattva asked that question, started the mind-only school. And then after our dear Bodhisattva asked that question and Lord Buddha explained it, was kind of dormant for like 200 or 300 years. And then Arya Sangha came along and reawakened interest in this book. Now, if you remember, Geshe Michael got these teachings and other students who were with him in India from a teacher named Geshe Thupten Rinchen. And he pointed out importantly that oftentimes Arya Sangha is quoted as reporting the views of the mind-only school. He says, quote, I'm reporting the views of the mind-only school. What does that mean? Does it mean he belongs to it? Some people think he belonged to it. But he says no. Geshe Thupten Rinchen says no. Arya Asanga did not belong to this school. And there are many occasions where he says Arya Sangha is reporting, in quotes, right, the views of the mind-only school, which means that Arya Asanga is really middle way. And he believes that the mind-only school is useful for comparative purposes. If you've been doing the meditations, a lot of them ask you to contrast the two ideas of the middle way and the mind only. They're two different positions on the same idea. And this not only helps to clarify the mind only school, but it also helps to clarify the middle way. What the middle way means. And most of our wrong ideas about the middle way school are what? What school are we in when we have the wrong ideas? Mind only. Most of us are in mind only all day, which is okay. It's cool. And we begin to recognize it. And we use it as a stepping stone towards the middle way. Sometimes momentarily we're in the middle way school, but most of the time we're not. Excuse me. So by studying both of them, which is the purpose of this class, by the time we finish this course, your idea of middle way school should be so much clearer. Why? Because you know the subtle wrong ideas of the other Mahayana school. So it's really good when you're teaching and somebody asks you a question and you say, oh, yeah, that's a wrong idea that the mind only people school have, right? And it's not quite pure middle way thinking. And then, because you can clarify it, you can say, that's the mind only version. And here's the corresponding middle way version. And it's a very helpful thing for understanding emptiness. So in that way, Lama Tsongkhapa shows us that Arya Sangha has reawakened the mind-only school, and that he's mainly using the sutra to do so. And that's the whole first section of today's class. That was just an introduction to what half of today's class. And then he goes on and says, how does Arya Sangha get into Trangme? What's Trangme? Anybody remember what Trangme is? You think while I blow my nose.
Slowly.
Figurative and literal. That's what Trangme is. Okay. So we'll find out today. So Arya Asanga gets into describing emptiness, which is called what in the mind only school? Totality. Thank you. Yeah, totality. Here, Arya Sangha uses a different word. He uses the word, say, dekonani. Dekonani. Ni is two. Right? So he is describing being free of two extreme viewpoints. And dekonani can be translated as thusness, as you can see on the slide. And what does it mean? It means one view is extreme one way, and the other view is extreme in the other way. In politics, we see it as extreme left and extreme right, right? And they both have a certain viewpoint about something which is false, which is not true. And so the object or the thing which is free of the ideas of those viewpoints, those two extreme viewpoints, is emptiness. And that's how Arya Asanga gets into talking about emptiness. So he's describing emptiness as that which is free or devoid of the two extremes. In fact, it's a pretty good description of what? What word? That we use all the time. Middle way. That's the middle way. That's Madhyamika. And why do we call that school middle way? Because they thread a middle path between the two extremes. So you'll probably be happy we're going to start out in the middle way today and hang out there for a while. And then we're going to go back to mind only. So we're going to go back to middle way school first, and it's very holy. It's very, very precious and holy. And this is one of the most important teachings of the middle way school. And then we're going to go back to the mind only version of it, which is not correct. So we're going to go for the correct one first so that it sticks in our mind before we go back to the incorrect one. Say ta. Ta. Ta means edge of something. It can mean the end of something. It can mean the limit of something. If, for example, you had reached enlightenment, they might name you gone to the limit or Tarchen. Lobsang Tarchen. Who was Lobsang Tarchen? They're whispering the answers to me. Thank you. Ken Rinpoche, Geshe Michael's teacher, Lobsang Tarchen. And it means, Lobsang means pure mind. So the one with the pure mind who's gone already to the limit, meaning to the end, crossed the finish line, right? Already reached enlightenment. So his name means the one with the pure mind who has become enlightened or gone to the end. In Buddhist philosophy, ta means an extreme or a wrong idea. It can mean like the edge of a cliff. Do you remember yuta and metta? The two extremes? Because if you fall off either edge, right? If your viewpoints cause you to wander that far, you end up in the hell realm. That's the general explanation. And in this case, Tom means extreme. But extreme, like you see this guy up on the tightrope, what would happen if missed his middle way step, right? It's extreme in the sense of falling off an edge into a very bad situation. You know, if you go off either side, if he missteps, he's probably going to die. Looking at this scene here, or on a slack line with these deep drops underneath you or either side. So we have to walk that middle way. so that we don't fall off into this extreme, either extreme view. We need to talk about what those are, right? What are those two extremes? There are two words, say ta and Tanzin. Ta means extreme, and Tanzin means holding to an extreme. Tanzin is like believing an extreme view. And they're really careful when they teach this subject in the monastery to say that the extreme to which this state of mind is holding. I'll say it another way. The idea which this state of mind has in mind. And this refers to something which doesn't even exist. If you believe in a self-existent pen, then your mind is holding on to something that doesn't even exist. It's like believing in Santa Claus. So what would that be? Would it be ta or Tanzin? Santa Claus is ta. And then believing in Santa Claus is Tanzin. Is that a good example? Does that help? It's holding to an extreme. In your homework, the answer key is extreme. To where we were. Oh, okay. Where were we? I think I was giving you the answer key's answer to the question about which is ta and which is Tanzin. And it says something like, technically speaking, an extreme represents the thing, which either concocting things, which means to make up things, right? It just means words counting things, saying they don't exist if they're not the way I see them, is grasping onto, is holding onto. And therefore it does not exist at all. So in the mind only school, for example, the two non-existent extremes would be represented by a construct. Remember those constructs that existed by definition, or a dependent thing that did not exist by definition. You okay? So holding to a thing that doesn't really exist, that's what we're talking about. Something that we construct that exists by definition, some, or a dependent thing, Shen Wang's, that did not exist by definition. Why the heck are we talking about this? We always have to come back to that. All of our suffering comes from believing in something that never could exist, never did exist. So it's not just misunderstanding something, it's believing in something that was never there. And there are two kinds of Tanzen that we're going to talk about. And let's see, how do I get back? I can't see the chat anymore. Go back. Oh, Jondok. Everybody say Jondok. I kind of like this. I don't know why I like the way this particular word sounds. Jondok. Jondok means concocting. We just used that word. Inventing. It says my internet connection is unstable. Concocting, inventing, making up. So when we say inventing an idea about something, the implication is that the thing doesn't exist at all. Or this word concocting. Like somebody's making up some charges, blaming somebody for something when the person is totally innocent. That's concocting. It means, yeah, to make up something where there is nothing, to invent something falsely, to see something there which was never there and never will be there and never could be there. So the point is that this viewpoint or this way of thinking or this misperception thinks it sees something there when there's absolutely nothing there. It can also be a quality of someone or something. It could be a good quality or not so good quality that we're inventing and placing upon somebody. When Geshe Michael asked Geshe Thupten Rinchen, what does John Doke mean? He said, Doke, right? This part here. Oop, there should be a little dot in between there. Doke, it's pronounced. It's a prenasal. Means to apply something, to label something. And dro, this is dro, Um, and by the way, what I'm sharing with you is probably not written down anywhere except here. So this is getting past, this is an oral teaching from Geshe Thupten Rinchen to Geshe Michael to me to you. Pretty cool, right? Dro, by the way, here, it means a feather, like on a bird. So drone dok means to apply a feather. And it refers to the act of inventing, fabricating, like making something, right? Concocting an arrow. Oh, everybody's frozen again. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So you have a stick and you have a feather and something for a point. You put those all together, voila, you have an arrow, right? So drondok means sticking on the feather, which means to make something where there's nothing there. It's just a stick, a feather, and some pointy piece that you put together. So that's what drondok means. What does the mind-only school's view of concocting something mean? What is their idea? Their idea is that certain constructs do exist, like this pen, right? Or this pen is white and brown. It's not in focus. Or the fact that Ina is called Ina. But these constructs don't exist by definition from their own side. Would middle way school accept this point? It would. And flirting with it, playing with it, can help throw you into the middle way. That certain constructs do exist. This is a pen. Does it exist? What would middle way school say? Yeah, there's a pen out here. I can write with it, right? But they don't exist by definition from their own side. Mind only school is saying that, and middle way. Middle way takes it that one step further, which says what? It's coming from my luminous image forced on me by the seeds that I planted in the past, right? Thinking that the pen could exist by definition is concocting something that doesn't exist, right? It doesn't exist by definition. So this wrong view, the thinking that exists by definition, is the basis of all of our prejudice and our intolerance. Why? Because we think that our opinion of things is the way that it really does exist. It is the way, right? It is how I perceive it. So it's got to be that way. And this is misunderstanding. This is thinking that the word bad applies from its own side to a situation that you are in. And by thinking in this way, you, me, all of us, if you are who you appear to me, which it's just an opinion, it's not the way it is. But by thinking in this way, we perpetuate all of our problems. So, middle way school would also say that constructs don't exist by definition. But when they say this, they mean something slightly different. In your homework, it talks about that construct. You remember that little boy named Tashi that we were talking about? So it's believing that a construct, such as the fact that the boy Tashi is what the name Tashi refers to, could exist by definition. Right? From its own side, with its own unique identity. That the name Ina is Ina. It's just a name. Ina refers to a person, but Ina does not, the fact that Ina is called Ina does not exist by definition. Where did it come from? It came from her parents. She wasn't born with it. So this begs a question of how you would help someone get over the extreme view of this inventing, right? Concocting. I don't know if that's a new word in your language or what it is in each of your languages, of inventing something. So, how would you do that in the mind only school? You would try to show someone that any object that they would think about, that they would consider, is empty of constructs that exist ultimately. What does that mean in normal English? Right? Is Ina called Ina self-existently? And unfortunately, I don't see the chat. But no. Is the bad boss self-existently a bad boss? Were they born that way? Yay. Now I can see the chat. Thank you, Elena. No, they weren't born that way. Right? Every single thing that gets us upset comes from our misunderstanding things. We think that the object, the pen, the boss, the friend is called that, whatever we label them, annoying, noisy, nosy, bossy. This is me. I'm talking about me, right? Does it come from their own side? No, it comes from my side, my label. The emptiness of friend is the fact that it doesn't have some self-existent right to be called friend. Right? There was something last night with somebody. What was it? I don't remember now, but it was like labeling somebody as something. It was like, you know, is does that come from their side? This construct that is applied to it doesn't exist from its own side. It's arbitrary. It's a way of looking at that person, right? And it's forced on us by our seeds. So when someone is in the middle of a heated argument, how could you talk to someone? How could you talk them down or out of it when they are upset? Probably you can't in the moment, but you could come back and try to show them how anything they could think of is empty of constructs that exist ultimately. Ultimately, meaning coming from their own side. It's empty, right? Those constructs are coming from your side. Lovable, difficult, all of it. And our language, we were talking about this last night, doesn't help. They are, I am, at least in English, makes it very, very solid. I am a good person. Why are they criticizing me? I am. They are critical. It takes away the understanding that it's all coming this way from seeds. So that was one extreme, Jondok. Then we have Kurndep. Say Kurndep. It's the other extreme and it's the opposite of Jondok. So what would that be? Jondok was saying there's something there when there's really nothing there. So what do you think Kurndep is? What's the opposite? To say there's nothing there when there really is something there. So a classic Kurndep would be, ah, she really doesn't have any compassion when they really do have compassion. Or this person is not a bodhisattva when they really are a bodhisattva. So holding that something or someone which does exist or does have a particular quality doesn't exist or doesn't have that quality. To the mind only school's view of discounting something is where we're going next. Shenwang Yongdrup Rangi Tseniki Majupa. Dependent things and emptiness don't have any nature of existing by definition. Why? Because changing things come from a sequence of cause and conditions, according to the mind-only school. If that's true, as mind-only school says, that changing things, shenwangs, come from causes and conditions, the seed causes the tree, right? They have to exist from their own side. They must, according to mind-only school. Likewise, emptiness is not just a fabrication of your mind. It really exists by definition from its own side. So, in the mind-only's view, discounting things means to say that dependent things, shenwangs and yongdrups, dependent things and emptiness, don't come from their own side. That's discounting. That's saying it's not true, okay? Thinking that my mind and the pen that it seeds are coming from different karmic seeds, not one karmic seed, as the mind-only school says, is what misunderstanding believes. So they're saying that they, meaning mind-only school, that the pen comes from one seed and I come from a different seed. And somehow we just ended up here together. That's misunderstanding. Understanding says, me and the pen came here from one seed. That's why we're here together. Or think about it this way. Who would say that this pen is a pen no matter what? That this pen should be called a pen under any circumstances. Or that the bad boss has always been, will always be, and is quite frankly right now a bad boss. Always. That's like the devil whispering in our ear. That's our misunderstanding. The mind-only school tries to say that because middle way people don't believe that an object exists by definition, that they're saying it doesn't exist at all. Okay. Yeah, us mind-only folks are saying, yeah, there's a pen out there, it works, but not from its own side. And so mind-only school accuses the middle way school of being nihilistic. Mind only does believe that me and a pen are coming from one seed. What they're saying Korndep means, discounting, would be to say that that is not the way it is. that discounting would be believing that we come from separate seeds. Right? Elena, is that a little clearer?
Yeah. Uh,
Thank you.
can I ask?
Let's wait till the end. Can you hold your
Okay.
question? Yeah, thank you. And these homeworks are a little difficult, so I've kind of pulled them out here, the homework questions. Number 8 asks, how would you help someone get over the extreme view of discounting something? And we're back in the mind-only school now. In the mind-only school, the extreme of discounting, we're still talking about Korndep, of discounting, saying something doesn't exist, or is to think that dependent things and emptiness don't exist by definition. What does that mean? Let's remember what that means. It means that they don't exist from their own side. They're saying that is misunderstanding, thinking that they don't exist from their own side. So again, things that depend on other things to exist, if the causes and conditions aren't there, then they can't exist. They're saying that if they didn't exist, there wouldn't be anything to apply a construct to. And then there would be no constructs. Right? So the extreme in the mind-only school, the extreme of discounting is to think that things that depend on other things to exist, their causes and their conditions, don't exist by definition, don't exist from their own side. Trying to say this in different ways to think about. So the mind-only school says, to us middle way people, you think that everything is a projection, that the pen doesn't exist from its own side. Then what the heck are you projecting onto? How can there be a pen out there if there isn't anything coming from its own side? I have that same question. Like, there's the chocolate sauce, but what about the ice cream? Does it exist out there self-existently? Where is it coming from? What is it that we're calling the pen if there's no pen there? Toward what can we make our projection? This is mind-only school people. And they say, obviously you middle way people don't believe in cause and effect because you say nothing exists. You're nihilists. That's an extreme. And this is how the mind-only school tries to convince middle way people that they are discounting things that actually do exist. And what are those things? Dependent things and emptiness, which exist by definition. Now, middle way school would respond, wait a minute. We never said the pen doesn't exist. We only said that it doesn't exist by definition. So let's take it to real life. What would the extreme of discounting look like in real life? Take the boss. Misunderstanding says, I'm not responsible for me being here and the boss being here at this moment. We don't come from one seed. I'm not responsible for the things I perceive. I'm mainly responsible for my own mind. I can accept that. But to say that one seed that I planted, one bad thing I did to somebody makes me go through 15 years of corporate life, which is a struggle with this boss in front of me, and that it's also creating that, sorry, impossible. This is the devil. This is misunderstanding. And then misunderstanding blames and does what it wants anyway, and the wheel goes around again and again and again and again. Sorry. Sorry. So who would be crazy enough to hold the second wrong view, saying Shen Wang's changing things in emptiness itself don't exist by definition? It's you middleweight folks. You're crazy enough to say that. According to whom? Mind only. So that was mind-only view of the two extremes. What about the middle way school? What did they say? They say inventing or concocting something is to say that if something exists, it must exist by definition. And if something did not exist by definition, then it could not exist at all. In the middle way, if you're thinking that the pen is coming from its own side, not through luminous images which are forced on you from sharing pens in the past, that's considered concocting. Jondoking, making up something or concocting something which doesn't exist. That luminous image which comes from seeds does exist. Self-existently, we didn't say that. The pen, though, which has its own identity from its own side, doesn't exist. You are grasping to something that doesn't exist. You're making up something that really isn't there. And this holding, this grasping to something that isn't there, you're holding a wrong view, Tarnzen. The concocting state of mind is focusing on the gotcha. an imagined, self-existent thing that never could, never will. This is the new mantra, right? Never could, never will, and doesn't exist now. Going back to logic, in the middle way school, a dunchi is a mental image of something that you have experienced already, right? Whereas a kuntak, as used in the mind-only school, means a mental fabrication that you may or may not have experienced. So there's these different ways of looking at things. There's these different terms. They're all trying to get us to think about how we are constructing our world. And according to the middle way, if something exists, it must exist by definition, the way it appears to me. Right? Yuna rangi tsene kijuku. If something exists, it must exist by definition. So when we believe, right, this is an extreme. Remember, they're not saying this is the way it is. This is an extreme. This is the first way of thinking about it, the two extremes. The first extreme of concocting, of downloading things. And when we believe that this self-existent thing exists, then we react to bad things with anger, with jealousy, and so turn that wheel of samsara again and again, perpetuating our own suffering and those negative things in our life. Did the internet go down again? No? Okay. People are frozen on my screen. Okay. Thank you. And so, this is what we want to stop in our life, right? Thank you, Anastasia. Back in your house. I hope your trip was good. But yeah, it's like, this is what we want to stop in our life. The suffering going round and round and round over and over and over and over again. So what the heck is it that's causing us to do this? That's what all of this is getting at. So corn dipping, discounting, according to the middle way, means to deny cause and effect because you heard that everything is empty and it's just a projection. How many times, or at least I don't know about you, but me growing up in the 60s when some of you weren't born yet, it's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. It's like, don't believe it. It's all an illusion. It doesn't exist. Is that what we're saying? No, of course not. And it doesn't mean because it's a projection, we can do whatever the heck we want. If things are empty, then nothing matters. And I can do anything I want, any bad thing, any good thing, and not experience any harmful results. True? Of course not. We know that. We've lived long enough to know that, right? So discounting middle way says Rangi tsene ki madrup namegu. If something doesn't exist by definition, then it doesn't exist at all. And here we're primarily talking about the laws of karma. By discounting the laws of karma, it is the ultimate misunderstanding of emptiness. It's thinking that if it's an illusion, doesn't matter. And this was something that was thrown around a lot in the 60s and the 70s because it sounded sexy, but people really didn't understand it. Actually, because karma and its consequences are an illusion, you gotta absolutely have to obey the laws of karma. It means that your hand is empty. It could become a dog's paw to you in 5 minutes. Right? Nihilism is a pretty good translation here for discounting things. The two extremes are sometimes called things exist and things don't exist, which means that they exist or don't exist by definition. They are also sometimes called everything is unchanging because things come from their own side. And then another one, everything is stopped because they don't exist at all. These are different ways that it's been phrased, these two extremes, right? And so now, wow, we went through that class quickly. I'm glad there's some times for questions because I think this is a difficult class, right? Really difficult class. But before we get to questions, just want to review your meditation with you. That do an analytical meditation, practice alternating between the mind only and middle way ideas of the two extreme views. Go over the extreme views. Maybe make yourself a chart, discuss it, study it together. How are they different? And how am I thinking about things in my world? Do I think that that person who paid for lunch for me and my friend the other day exists from their own side? Or the person who cut me off on the road exists from their own side? What is discounting and what is concocting from the two different schools, the mind only and middle way school? So you got some work to do in the next couple of days until our next class. Right. And let's say our prayers and then we'll open up for questions. Okay. Sashi Puki Jukshing Me Chum Rirang Jin De Gempadi Sange Shingju Mikte Ulwargi Drokun Namdak Shingla Chupar Shok Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami Gewadi Kewokun Sunam Yashe Soksokshing Sunam Yashe Lejungwe Dampar Kuni Dopar Sho. Hard stuff. Yeah. So let me open up gallery view so I can see all your faces. Questions? Please just turn your mic on and ask, and maybe I can answer. Elaine, I know that you had some questions. You still here? Where
Yeah,
are you?
I believe I got it now.
That's
Thank you so
cool.
much. Yeah.
That's cool. Anybody else have questions? It's so lovely to see people from all over the world here. Well, then, if there's no questions, then I will see you on Thursday and have a good rest of your day, evening, nighttime, wherever you are. And thanks for being here and practicing this stuff. And see you on Thursday for class 8. Amazing. Okay, doke. Bye-bye. One more thing. Thank you to everybody who's recording, all of the interpreters, all of the staff. Thank you ever so much. We could not do this without you. So it's always there, upper part of my mind, even if I forget to say it. So thank you to all of you. See you on Thursday.